Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, chaps. Rich, it's great to be back. How are you?
Oh, well, buddy, yeah, very good to see everybody. Great to be podding again after a month off, and I'm well. I decided not to play any fantasy games during the World Cup and just kick back and watch the football. And personally, I think that was the right decision for me. And I've been enjoying the football, and but looking forward to getting back to FPL. How about you?
Yeah, exactly the same. Really, really enjoyed the World Cup. Obviously, Wales were a bit disappointing. I think we've been spoilt. I think over the last few years as Welsh fans. I just want to check. I'm not sure we're actually live. Could someone in the chat please just let us know?
I think we're live. We are live.
We are live.
I'm looking at the YouTube. Yeah, we are live. Yeah.
Superb. Okay, in that case, we'll go ahead, and I'll go ahead with my disappointment of Wales. But yeah, I think we've been spoilt. Since the Euros in 2016. I think Wales have probably very much overachieved. And because of that, this seems like a bit of a disappointment. But, that Iran game just killed us. But fair play to Iran. Fair play to loads of the kind of lesser fancied countries in the World Cup. I think it's been absolutely brilliant for the World Cup, for football in general. How many times have we heard over the years, they shouldn't be in it. They shouldn't be in it. They, this, that and the other. But it just goes to prove if you give the countries a chance, they will, eventually improve and come good and make a real showing. So I think for that, I think the World Cup has been absolutely superb. I thought England were unlucky on the weekend as well against France. I know this is not I think the difference was just that obviously France was just a bit more clinical when it really, really mattered. But I know that's not a theme shared with a lot of English fans, but I just think that's just my view. England. I just think that cross off Griezmann, that header off Giroud was just
class. But
just that moment it went
50,
for them.
always going to be, in my view, a 50-50 game. And we definitely at least matched France and beat them in a number of different departments, certainly statistically and
definitely
from a field perspective. But we needed to score that penalty, didn't we? And then who knows? We would have definitely been in it, but we just went the wrong side of it. And I don't feel I spent my lifetime waiting for England to win a World Cup, and we still haven't won one. I was born in '67, and so I've never been alive while we've had a World Cup. And it's just one of those things. But this time, I don't feel it's due to an injustice or or a performance issue or anything like that. I'm quite proud of the players, and I'd certainly stick with Southgate. I don't know what you think, but I'd give him the Euros at least to see if we can win with this crop of players.
Well, let's see what the wonderful Jian Batra has to say about it all. Welcome, Jian. Great to have you back on. And how are you? Looks like Jan is just frozen. Maybe he's back now. He was completely overwhelmed by oh, here he is. He's back. Yeah. Jan, how are you, buddy?
It just booted me out of thing. Yeah, I'm good. It just booted me out of thing. No, I'm good. Thanks. Obviously, the World Cup's been amazing. A lot of upsets, and probably one of the best World Cups we've had, at least in my lifetime. I've only watched 3, but still. And I think with England, I was actually so confident they were going to go through, and I thought they had a real good shot at winning it. But obviously, things happen. It was unfortunate with the Kane miss, but those things happen. But I echo what Rich said. I'd give him 24, the Euro 2024. I think he's done really well with the squad, especially from where he picks it up. And you give him one last chance, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. I think that England have really come a long way, and they showed glimpses in this World Cup of what they can be. I think they've probably been, I wouldn't say but obviously one of the best teams, one of the best showings, but it's just the key moments in it. It's a very, very British thing in it. Can't seem to get over the line sometimes, but it's looking good, and I definitely give him the Euros as well. Anyway, let's give the elbow to the World Cup, and let's get back to FPL, which seems an absolute lifetime away. And you know what, chaps? I haven't even bothered picking up our teams from Gameweek 16 because I didn't see the point, because obviously everything now is changed. Just a very quick look at our ranks. Jan, haven't had the best of season so far. Jan, it's probably fair to say you've taken a couple of gambles, haven't you? I think, which haven't quite worked.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's been a really poor season. I think you're being nice about it, but I'm sure it'll get better over the next coming weeks.
I'm sure it will. I had a red arrow from I think it was 220k to 349. Bit of a disappointing thing, but I'm still, if I'd have taken, I think I'd have taken 349k at this point of the season at the start. And Rich, top 10k already. I mean, what can we say? Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, just managed to literally creak into the top 10k with the Darwin transfer on the last day. So yeah, if they stopped everything now, I'd be happy with the ranking. But a long way to go. A long way to go.
There are. So we're going to take a look at the fixtures, the double game week announcements, any fallout from the World Cup. So things, players that may have become a bit risky to pick first time back. It's a bit difficult still being sort of 9 or 10. Well, it's more than that. It's like 11 or 12 days out still from the kickoff. World Cup still haven't finished, so we're not sure, but we'll just have a chat about that and maybe some opportunities that may have arisen for certain players as well. And then we're going to have a quick look at predicted points, position by position, from keepers all the way through to forwards. Just have a bit of a look at which kind of players we should be kind of targeting for our Game Week 17 teams. We've all done a draft. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I probably took about 2.5 minutes putting together a draft because we still don't know an awful lot. But I must say, well, at this point, I'm kind of reasonably happy with my draft. I haven't put a lot of time into it. Got a couple of decisions to make of whether to put Kane and someone else, but we'll have a chat about that in a bit as well. But yeah, firstly, let's get the fixtures up for the next 5 game weeks, so 17 through to 21. And Jian, can I just let you loose on what you're thinking for the next month in FPL?
Yeah, so firstly, the team that I really like is Man United. I think a lot of their players are starting to really improve, and they're improving as a team. And then you look at Forest, Wolves, Bournemouth in a row, and I think those are 3 fixtures to go really hard at an attack. I'd say the 4 main options you have are Lisandro Martinez because he's at 4.5 million. Diego Dallo is my preferred defender at 4.8 because he gives you the attacking upside. And then Rashford and Bruno seem to be in really good form. They both had good World Cups. They both ended the campaign pretty strongly for United. Rashford more so. So that's one team I really like. I think Triple City is kind of non-negotiable, given they've got Leeds, Everton, then a double in 20. And I think you're going to have Haaland. Foden is such good value, and so is Cancelo. So I think though that 6 is kind of your core, and then I quite like Salah's prospects alongside maybe one Chelsea asset for Bournemouth, Forest in the double.
Okay, interesting start off there. And obviously with the doubles, so we've got 1 in 19, which is no, we haven't. So we've got a couple in 19. Chelsea have got Man City and Fulham, and Fulham have got Leicester and Chelsea. And then obviously in 20, Man City have got United and Spurs got Arsenal City. We know a couple of these could potentially change depending if there's an FA Cup third round replay, I think, especially for Man City. But how has that affected your thinking at this kind of early stage?
Well, I think it means I'm going to do something similar to what most of us did in the first half and go for that Pereira-Mitrovic double up. It kind of puts me off going 3-5-2 just because if Pereira's got a double in 19 and he has Crystal Palace and Southampton to proceed that at his great price, it's kind of difficult to let him go for 4.5 million. And I think with the form Mitrovic has been in, he was pretty decent at the World Cup as well. It's kind of a no-brainer to have him at his value. So that's kind of where I've gone. I've really attacked the fixtures and been quite aggressive with my team at the start, as we'll see lately. But I think there's a lot of opportunity early on. Exciting
stuff. Rich, welcome back to FPL, and dust off all the cobwebs. And what are your immediate thoughts?
Well, a couple of things as we sort of sleepwalk into next week and do just that, dust off everything. The nice thing is there's no need to panic, because for the first time mid-season, the markets are frozen, so there isn't that worry about players rising or falling. You can just draft away and do a team every day if you like, and not worry about you've got to sell this player because he's got accrued value and what might want to buy him back. So you can just do your team once next Christmas Day if you want, or on Boxing Day morning. It's just a planning exercise until then, so that's really nice. It also feels like, obviously I'm having a good season, so I've got most of the right players already, or it feels like I've got most of the right players already in my team. So there's no need to change a lot just because you've got unlimited transfers. The only thing, I would say is there's obviously an opportunity here to play the fixtures and play for me, I'd say concentrate very much more on the 3 immediate fixtures in the Christmas New Year break.
Agree.
Rather than some of our views are more 5-6 week views that we've got, on the pod today. But first of all, get through Christmas, get a good Christmas, because then you've got all sorts of FA Cup games and winter breaks and God knows what in January. So there's a big gap between those sort of 2021 weeks. So I'm really focusing on game weeks 17 to 19 as a block, for a priority for this team. I do like United, but I wouldn't put them in the same bracket yet as Arsenal, Newcastle, City assets. So I'm very unlikely to, destroy my team to get loads of United and Chelsea assets in just because they've got a double and just because, United have got, some good fixtures. So I think a United defender looks a good idea. And then you may want to punt on a Rashford or a Bruno or something like that. But I won't be straying too far from the template, if you like, with my team.
It's interesting that, though, Rich, you just said, about targeting the first 3. And, United and Chelsea, for example, have got pretty plum fixtures for those first 3 back, whereas Newcastle's okay. Away to a very much improved Leicester, home to Leeds and away to Arsenal. And Arsenal are home to West Ham, which is pretty decent, then away to Brighton and then Newcastle. I can personally see a lot more upside in United and Chelsea players in those opening 3, and that's notwithstanding the fact that they also double in 20 then as well. So, what are you just going to stick with the pre-World Cup form and go from there?
No, I mean I'll cover it, but then we're not. We are setting up. This is like our final wild card, if you like, will probably come into play in around 10 game weeks time. So you've got to set up a squad for the long term. I mean, it does depend on your ranking as well. If you're down in the ranks, you're going to want to make ground quickly and have a really good Christmas set of fixtures. If you're looking to play the longer game, then you can take a longer term view on the players you hold. But clearly, if you look at the stats, the best defenses are still City, Arsenal, Newcastle, etc. So you're not going to break that defense up just to get Chelsea and Fulham players in, and and United still, I think, have got to establish themselves as a top 4 side again. They haven't done enough to convince me of that yet. And also, although Rashford had a good World Cup, I still think he's a bit of a risk or a bit of a punt as a player to have. He's in my draft, you'll see later, but I may take him out before next week. He's by no means nailed for me in my side. I just think you want to think about getting United players, but there are other opportunities out there. That's my only thoughts. And similarly, at the moment, you don't know who's going to be in the Chelsea team either. I mean, I know Jian's a Chelsea fan as well. I don't know who's going to start next week. Do you? I don't know.
I think it's a really difficult one to predict with Chelsea. That's why, when I was drafting, I wasn't really looking at our assets in particular. One thing I do think is how Arsenal are affected by Gabriel Jesus being out for 3 months.
I agree with that.
I think Nketiah is a good replacement, but he offers so much to this system in terms of hold-up play, but also off the ball. His pressing is relentless, so I wonder if they'll suffer defensively as a result, and just maybe the World Cup stopping the momentum, players coming back at different times. So that's one thing I'm slightly wary of, because I do think that West Ham, Brighton, and Newcastle, who won't have had too many players away in comparison, is slightly tricky.
I kind of agree there, and I think it's a really good point you make there, Rich, because I suppose that myself and Jian, who are not currently in the top 10k, will be looking for some kind of, I don't know, edge maybe, and short, maybe a few more short-term points and punts. Whereas, as you say, your goal now is probably just to get through Christmas, and if you're still at your same rank at the end of it, you'd be absolutely over the moon, wouldn't you? Whereas probably Jian and I are a bit different. We probably want to try and get up towards that top 100k or something like that. So, interesting thinking. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see our teams, because I would guess that, just in that brief chat, I would guess that my team, Rich, is very different from your team, just based on that.
Well, it might. Yeah, you're probably going to be inclined to go for it a bit more with the doubles that are coming, and because if all of a sudden those teams do perform in the doubles, above the how they've been doing all season, if you're maxed out in them, or if you're close to maxed out, you will make gains. So the gains are there to be had. You could argue why not set up for them and then revert to the template afterwards. It's perfectly all right to go for it. I'm not saying don't. I just probably won't myself because of silly things like ownership worrying me, and boring stuff like covering Almiron.
And you being like a really good manager,
have to have rather than I really want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like
Let's just quickly say hello to everyone in the chat. Mark Bison, I'm 974 says normality finally returns. Vindy is in. As is Josh Hall, says, great to be back. Can't wait for FPL to start soon. FPL Swanson, FPL Pieman, Sachin Rajput, Wangani Fedem says, good to be back. Andrew Savage says, Rich Clarke, hero. And Burno is in, as is Big A. And FPL Pieman says, Martial, switch to Eddie for the double. That is something I'm certainly looking at as well. I think I got Martial in my team. You can call him a punt or whatever you want to call him, but I've got him so far in my draft. I really like it too. I think I think he's going to go under the radar a little bit.
Certainly on a candidate, isn't he? He's only played. Does he have one start? Is it 79 minutes or 71 minutes?
He's gonna start up front now, right? Obviously, with Ronaldo gone, his only competition is gone. So he should start. Let's have a look at a few players then who may be a little bit risky. Let's just say for game week 17. So we've got a graphic up now, and in the graphic it's got Lloris, who probably may not have been that popular. We've also got Saka, Kane, Alvarez, who will definitely be a risk, and Perisic as well. They're probably more popular sort of picks. But Rich, in terms of this, in terms of this, it's very hard to say because there's also a number of players who are coming back from injury. Reece James for me is a prime candidate for someone who they have cracking fixtures to start off with and a double. He could absolutely go off, or he could not even play. So I suppose in terms of your risk appetite and you're really thinking around these sorts of players, where are you sat at the moment?
Well, I think we're probably, many of us were worried, weren't we, that if Brazil and England had gone through to the last four of the World Cup, and hence whatever happened, were involved in matches this weekend, that would put about 35 core FPL players, at risk of starting on Boxing Day. I think that risk has largely gone away as a result of those two major teams going out, but there are still a sprinkling of players. I mean, some of them are on the graphic. I think we've got players like Perisic, and maybe the one that isn't on there, like Saliba, who's very popular. He hasn't played a lot for France, but he's still with the squad. He's still going to be celebrating with the squad if they win the World Cup. Will he be ready to start on Boxing Day, having had being given a week off after it all finishes? You've got to say there's a few core risks from those teams that are still left in there. I think Kane's possibly up there with, as a result of maybe, is there any mental scars there? He's on 4 yellow cards, various more sort of subtle issues as to why he might be at the same time, a good pick, but also potentially a risky pick if he gets a suspension, that kind of thing. So there's things to think about in terms of popular players that may not be there. And there's also, a bunch of players that, are either possibly injured or not injured, according to our thinking. Now, most of us have probably drafted Kepa into our squads as a potential goalkeeper combination, but he still hasn't kicked a ball, or he still hasn't saved a ball. I was getting an update on injuries just before we went on air, and he is still, only in, early stages of training, and, and is progressing according to what Potter is saying. So he needs to have a game really before we stick him in. And I don't think Chelsea, they're not in the Carabao Cup anymore, are they? They got knocked out. So they're going to have to play a friendly. I think they've got maybe one closed doors friendly on the 20th, I think, which is not widely publicised. But things like that, you're going to want players to get some sort of pre-season minutes before they they go in the squads. Otherwise, it's risky. What do you think,
Yeah.
Jian?
Oh, yeah. Oh, so you go, Jan, yeah.
Yeah, so I've got Kepa in my draft as well, as we'll see later. But essentially, he's just a placeholder at the moment until we get some more news on his injury situation. I do think for at least the first 3 game weeks, he probably is the best keeper there. So that'll be interesting. I think you make a really interesting point about Harry Kane being on 4 yellow cards as an added precedent to why he may not start, given the mental scars from the World Cup. And I think that'll be a really interesting topic as to whether you do go for Harry Kane, because the fixtures are decent. Or whether you don't and you put the money somewhere else.
Yeah, because I forgot about his 4 years. I got to be honest, and I was having an R in whether to go. I think it was something like Reece James and Darwin, or Kane and a 4 million. But I think with the combination of of the yellow for Kane, 3 games in 6 days or whatever they're going to have as well. He's minutes wise, is he going to be fit to play all those games? Consider he just had a pretty grueling World Cup, and the 4 yellows, and as you say, the mental scars. It's interesting there. I think my current thinking with all those things in my mind is I probably won't go for him just because of that option of Darwin. And Reece James.
There's so many good options, isn't there? So many good options in the forward line for these fixtures, and also 3-5-2 is very viable as well. So just not even having 3 strikers is perfectly good way to set up. So yeah, I just think Kane. Probably the reason he's on the slide is he is a popular pick and he'd be in a lot of drafts, purely because he's also got a very good record in Christmas fixtures, and and he's normally nailed. But it's just he's not. I don't think he is a must-have at Christmas, given the alternatives that are out there.
Is there anyone else in your mind, Jian, in terms of you would just absolutely be on him, if it wasn't for the World Cup or kind of injury doubt or anything else?
So I do really like Kane. I think Reece James is a really interesting one. I think so. He's in light training at the moment, and so is Wesley Fofana, and I think that makes a big difference because Wesley Fofana can obviously play right centre back, allowing Reece James to play right wing back. So I think, given we've got about 10, 11 days left, I think the timing of when they come back in is really important, especially with how the upside of those 2 players. So Reece James is definitely one on monitor, but so too Fofana, because I think as a pair, it increases Reece's ceiling exponentially.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And, on the other side of the coin, then there are potentially some players who may benefit from other players, kind of not being fit. Eddie Nketiah is probably a player who we've all kind of thought, as soon as Jesus got injured, I don't know about you guys, but my immediate thought was Eddie Nketiah, just being a fantasy manager is kind of what we do. But yeah, we've got a bit of a graphic up now. There's a few players. Kepa is on this, maybe he shouldn't be, but Nketiah, Gabriel for Arsenal, obviously not picked. I'd probably add Firmino into this as well. Probably a bit of a late one, but only because obviously Diaz and Jota are going to be out now for quite a while. So I think that pretty much, I wouldn't say nails, but probably 80% of minutes are going to be shared between Darwin, Salah, Firmino, and potentially Elliott and Carvalho. Rashford's in there as well. So even though he went to the World Cup, he obviously didn't get a great deal of minutes. Ten Hag's comments about Rashford's, I think, have been incredibly positive. Saying that aside from Mbappe, he's probably one of the greatest players on the shoulder of the last man and bits and pieces, and he really, really likes Rashford. And just the other one on there, put Doherty on there, only because obviously Perisic's on the last one because Croatia got to the semis and Sessegnon is still injured as well, so Doherty could potentially have a bit of an explosive first 2 or 3 weeks back. But yeah, Rich, I know you had a couple of others as well, didn't you? A couple of players who maybe we wouldn't normally look at, but could be because of circumstance.
Yeah, I certainly like Gabriel. I ended up buying Ben White a few weeks before the end of the first block of games, just because I was There was that rumor that he had a knock going down the tunnel just before in one of the midweek games, and that stopped me buying him for that weekend. I think he went on and scored a 15-pointer, before the break, and I was, stuck with Ben White. Ben White's been fine, but I didn't get that real haul out of Gabriel. I always had my eye on him, and because he's had a month off now, he's pretty nailed right in the Arsenal side. So if you're setting up a team with Trippier, Cancelo, Gabriel template, and you're going to play 3 at the back, that's it. Just set and forget it. That's it. You could set his team up for the rest of the season just with that guy. Great attacking threat. 5.2. Obviously, Saliba's is still at the World Cup and also still on 4 yellows. So I'd go Gabriel over Saliba. Ben White, I think, it's come out that he came home due to some sort of bust up. I don't know precisely what the details was, but it wasn't an injury related thing or a family related thing. It was more to do with maybe not getting on with the some of the guys in the coaching team or something. So he's back with Arsenal, seems happy. So Ben White's still a pick, but I'd probably go, if I've got the money, for Gabriel over Ben White. Rashford I do like. So by contrast, we've got Saka on the risks slide, but we've got Rashford on the opportunities slide. I do think, given the United's fixtures, he's probably the one United attacker I would go for. I don't think Martial can play 3 games in a week. He's even more made of glass than the likes of Callum Wilson. So good luck if you go for him, but I don't think you'll get 3 90s out of him. So I think Rashford, given his form in the World Cup, scored a couple of cracking goals and 3 goals, I think, but the free kick was great. So I think he could be on free kicks, some of the free kicks as well when he gets back. So I like Rashford as a pick at 6.7. The Doherty thing is interesting. I didn't go for him first. I still think it's a bit of a minefield, the Tottenham wing backs. Personally, I'm not sure I'll go for any Tottenham given the immediately. I quite like Kulusevski as someone to come in for the double, but I'd quite like to see how they go, because they've got injuries. They've got Charlison's out, isn't he? Kane, we don't know where he's going to be. Son still didn't really look at it, did he, in the World Cup? So I think, not sure on Tottenham.
Fair enough.
Thanks.
Jian, anyone under the radar who you've spotted?
Yeah, I was going to go look at the forwards more, but since Rich mentioned Son, I agree. I thought during the World Cup he just wasn't as prolific as he usually was, and I'm not quite sure what's wrong with him this season. I'm sure he'll return back to his form, but I think that's one he's probably in a void at the start. I think the forwards are quite interesting though, specifically Tony, Nunes, and Callum Wilson. I think Callum Wilson will be on a bit of a confidence high after getting picked for the England squad, racking up an assist in the first game. They've got pretty decent fixtures to start, so I think that could be an interesting one just to attack short term. Nunes is a difficult one for me because I think the fixtures are decent. They're not brilliant. But I also think he's quite a player who really relies on confidence. And a lot of confidence to do really well, just given what I've seen. And I think with Uruguay getting knocked out of the World Cup in the group stage and the fact that he didn't have a very good tournament, I thought he was quite poor, to be honest. And I had high prospects for him. But given he's quite poor, I wonder how he'll react and if he'll bounce straight back. And then the next one is Ivan Toney. It's a little bit tricky because it doesn't really attack the first 3, but then 20, 21, 22 look really good. But with someone like him against defenses like Liverpool and West Ham in 18, 19, even Spurs in 17, I think he can really get out. There's at least like maybe 2 goals. There's 2 goals in those 3 games for him, or a goal and an assist. And honestly, if you get that with his run from 20, I think you'd be pretty happy at a decent price. So I think those 3 are certainly ones to monitor, maybe be a bit careful with, but there's certainly opportunity there.
I think that Tony is, he's really come through this. He's obviously showed a lot of promise in previous seasons. His record in the Championship, was it? It's like 43 goals or whatever it was a couple of years ago, which was crazy. But he seems to have really, really, flourished and found his feet at this level now. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's like snapped up by a really big team, in the coming year or 2. But yeah, he just looks an animal, amazing at penalties, just a really good all round footballer.
Hasn't he got this FA charge hanging?
Yeah, he has.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. We don't really know what's going on with that. I'm probably speaking exclusively of that. But obviously, we'll have to wait to see what goes on with that. But just
I think he's got a point to prove as well. after being dropped from the World Cup
Well,
squad.
he
I think
did. He did
might.
that against Man City.
We saw what
didn't
happened at City. So yeah, I think we'll get him.
Yeah.
He'll come back in good form.
A couple of other players. I noticed Matip is back, and not that I would say, Matip as a pick potentially. Even though he could be pretty good in his own right. I think he finished off last season really well, but I do think Matip back could really help steady the Liverpool defensive ship. I think that obviously Trent has struggled, but with Matip playing on that side, I think that'll help. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Liverpool improve a lot defensively. Now Matip is back. Even though he is injury prone, right? And his replacements don't very often shower themselves in glory, right? Do they? So
yeah. Well, Kanate still played the semi-final.
He played.
So he's in that
brilliant.
kind of extra week off type territory, isn't he? So
he is. And a couple of other picks, interesting ones. We haven't mentioned Trossard yet. And he's one of these players. I think he's unfashionable, but he strikes me similar to Tony. He'll just keep on scoring or assisting, like a goal every other game, right, or something along those lines. And because he's unfashionable, and because he's in that price bracket, along with maybe, I don't know, well, I'll say Almiron. Almiron's not fashionable, but he's popular at the moment, and maybe Rashford and and these kind of players, Martinelli, doesn't really get the credit he deserves. And another player, Rodrigo at Leeds, who I don't know if you remember, Rich, but tipped him as an outsider to do well in Gameweek 16. He goes and scores a couple against Spurs. But Rodrigo's goal to minutes ratio this season is insane.
Yeah, very high.
Is insane. And when he's fit, he is a wonderful footballer who scores a lot of goals and FPL points. So I think there are other options if we're looking at them. But this is the problem: is where do you fit them in, because the template is so strong, and these kind of players never really talked about. But yeah, they're just another couple I would chuck in there. But
yeah, they are. But they're from those slightly sort of more mid-table type sides, aren't they? Where you get variable performances from those teams. So
yeah, that's fair.
At the moment, everyone's looking at the high win ratio sides and going, well, these are I can get mid-price players from top sides here and make up a fantastic squad. So the amount of space you've got in there for the likes of Leeds, Brighton players, it's unless they've got doubles or unless they've got really strong fixture runs, it's like they're not going to get a look in at the moment with an unlimited transfers type situation, are they? I mean, I had Trossard for the last 2 weeks. I brought him in as one of my sort of we were all punting, weren't we, for a week or two.
Yeah.
Brought him in. He got an assist in 15 and did nothing in 16, so I got about 7 points out of him. But he just didn't. I think he's a bit like Reece James, isn't he? He'll plod along and then he'll go off and return 17, 18 points in a game. So definitely isn't dead as an asset, but maybe not now is the time. Maybe when they get that Crystal Palace game rescheduled that we're all waiting for, the train strike one. That'll be the time to pick him up, maybe.
Yes, it will. And just another player. Alexander Isak is someone who I brought in on wildcard in Game Week 8. He looked very, very good when he first joined Newcastle. Obviously, Wilson was out, but I think it's going to be interesting how he's going to impact that Newcastle team. They paid a lot of money for him, so they're not going to, just sack him off. But I'm not quite sure where he fits in that front line now with, Wilson, Almiron, St. Maximum. They're all playing really well. So I suppose that's just something to keep an eye on as well. Any thoughts on that, Rich?
Yeah, I think. Clearly, I think most squads will have some sort of Newcastle attacking asset, either Almiron or Wilson, are the standout picks. But if Isak is back for the Christmas fixtures, you'll probably see him getting a start over Wilson in one of those 3 games, because again, I don't think Wilson's got a slight niggle, hasn't he? Yeah. He missed a few England training sessions, wasn't available for a couple of the games, but I'm sure he'll be okay. But again, he's probably one of those players you think, are they going to play 3 games in 6 days or 3 games in 8 days? And perhaps if he can have a bench appearance there, then it'll just hold Wilson's longevity. But again, you maybe might go for Almiron instead, because he's more likely to start them all.
I think so.
So you can read it in two different ways, can't you?
Yeah.
But I think Isak was coming through. I'm sure he's not afraid to start him. That's for sure. Certainly when the games are tight.
Let's have a quick look at the predicted points per position. This is for the next 5 game weeks, so it does include a couple of doubles, obviously. Keepers, Edison, top 24 points. Ramsdale, second, 21. Leno, interestingly, at Fulham, obviously, that is taking into account the double game week. Kepa, now, Kepa's minutes, we have reduced his expected minutes. So if he's definitely starting game week 17 and upwards, they would be a lot higher. He would probably be top, actually, if he was on kind of 90 expected minutes for the next 5 game weeks. Alisson, Pope and Lloris in there. Ward, still only 4.1 million, down at 18 points. He's going to be really, really popular. But Jian, in terms of keepers at the moment, who are your 2 keepers at the moment?
So at the moment, I've got Kepa and Ward. I think Ward's just such a good price at 4.1 million, and he'll always be able to fill in a game where your main keeper's got a bit of a difficult fixture. Yeah. The Chelsea rotation isn't brilliant, but it's still pretty decent with those 2 sides. So I quite like Ward at 4.1, and then I've also got Kepa. Just attack the first 2, attack the double, and I think will be pretty good. It'll be really interesting to see the defenders. I'm very interested to see where Robertson and Trent are, because I've got my eye on them, and I've got a good feeling about them.
Oof, okay. Rich, you obviously you guys are Chelsea fans. Is Kepa first choice now at Chelsea, and will he be for the foreseeable? Because that's something I'm unsure of.
I think so. I think he'll get his place back. As I think you may have said at the beginning, if or maybe I was watching some other content earlier, and someone said if Mendy plays a couple because Kepa's not quite ready, but and puts in good performances, then you might retain the place. Kepa might just not walk straight back in when he's fit again. But I think given the fact there's another 10 days to go, if he gets some minutes next week, I think we'll see him starting on game week 17. And as Jian says, you've got Danny Ward there that people were starting to play anyway, or choose to play, because Leicester's form was so good going into the break. So he's the perfect bench keeper to have there, who you're not going to be afraid to play if Kepa is going to miss. I would just say, if you've got Kepa, keep a little bit of money in the bank when you set up your draft, so you can maybe swap to Leno, or you can swap to another keeper for a double game week if his injury is worse than expected. And as long as you're not on 0.0, you can do that quite easily, can't you? So, okay,
let's look at defenders, and as Jian says, let's have a look at the Liverpool ones as well. So top of the shop, Cancelo, unexpectedly right at the top, 7.4 million, 30 points over the next 5 game weeks. Reece James, we've set his expected minutes at roughly, I think it's about 70 minutes. So again, if you think that Reece James is going to play 80, 90 every single game, he's probably one to get at 5.8 million. Kyle Walker is in there at 24 points. I think we've set his expected minutes again, roughly kind of 70. We're not sure if he'll start every single game and things, but something is probably fair. Akanji's is quite high still, but that's based on, I think he started every 6 of the 7 last games for the World Cup. Obviously now Stones is going to be back. I think they've got 5 top class centre backs now, so I will personally be avoiding that thing there, because how are they going to pick 2 centre backs between Ruben Dias, Aymeric Laporte, Akanji, Stones and Ake is absolutely beyond me. So but I do think Cancelo and or Walker are pretty decent. Obviously you're paying a premium for Cancelo over Walker because of he's nailed in his potential attacking output. But if you can't stretch to Cancelo, nearly a 3 million savings go down to Walker. It's not the end of the world, so just something to think there.
No, it's a massive difference, isn't it? 4.8. Yeah, huge. Certainly if you need to make that switch some money around and you've got 2 transfers, that's the way to do it, isn't it?
Indeed. And then we have Trent Alexander-Arnold at 7.2 million. 23 points. Bear in mind, Liverpool don't have a double, do they either? So they're kind of up there on merit in terms of their individual predictions per game. Then Thiago Silva is still quite high for Chelsea, they have the double, but also their fixtures are really, really good. He's appearing in a lot of their recommended transfer drafts on Fantasy Football Hub. Robertson is then next with 22. Then Trippier, Perisic, Koulibaly. Zinchenko for me is quite an interesting one as well, because I think if he gets back to full fitness and starts every game, I think at 5 million he's a bit of a bargain. Actually, I think I would far prefer him over Gabriel or Ben White personally. And then we get down then into the others. But yeah, Jian, you were excited to see the defenders. What are your thoughts, on that? And will you be putting a Liverpool defender in your team?
Yeah, cool. I'll start with the City assets just because they were ranked first. I think the only reason I'm picking Cancelo over Walker is mainly, like you said, for that price, at least you get nailed 90 minutes pretty much every week. You know he's going to be on that team sheet. Whereas with Walker and his potential fitness struggles, I just wonder if he misses a game here or there, especially given the intensity of the schedule. So that's probably why I'd pay the premium, and you get the higher upside ceiling. The only thing with Cancelo is I wonder what his mental state will be like after being dropped from the Portuguese side and them getting knocked out in the quarters to Morocco. And I wonder if that could have a little bit of a knock-on effect. But I'm sure, given the amount of time he's got, he'll be fine. And then I really like the Liverpool assets because I think things are starting to come together for them. I think Konate looked unbelievable last night. I think he got man of the match. And if not, it was probably Griezmann, but he was unbelievable last night. That'll help shore up the defence. Matip, obviously, being back will certainly help. And then I think the midfield is where they've struggled, and I think teams have kind of found them out. But I think with Thiago having a month's rest and given his injury concerns before, he'll be quite well rested. I think Henderson had a really good World Cup, and that'll be good for his confidence and form going in. And I think Fabinho not really playing many minutes will be, again, maybe just good to give him a bit of a rest. Maybe that's what he needed. So and I think the fixtures are better than maybe the FDR in general says. I think Villa, Leicester, Brentford, Brighton, Chelsea, Wolves. I think there's points there. So I quite like those two fullbacks, especially alongside Salah. My only concern is the price, and I don't have them in my draft at the moment, just because I think it's quite difficult to fit them in. But I really like those prospects. And I like the hub recommending Silva and Koulibaly because both are good in the air, especially Silva. And I think they're not too expensive, not too cheap either. So there's certainly a haul in one of them there. Within the next three.
Yeah, what are your thoughts, Rich, on the defence?
Yeah, I think it's obviously skewed because it's skewed for the doubles, isn't it? For Chelsea and City has got an extra game, so you're seeing their players higher up. Don't see Trippier's. Yeah, he is in there, but he's quite well down the list. I mean, I think if I was going to go for a Liverpool defender, I'd probably go for Robertson, just because he's had the month off, and he's that $500,000 cheaper, or roughly $500,000 cheaper. I don't think I have a spot for a Liverpool defender, just because I think 3 clean sheets is it so far this season. I mean, they're just not keeping the volume of clean sheets. No team really is, but particularly Liverpool. I think they kept 10 clean sheets by this stage last season. So there's been a massive drop off in their clean sheet side of the point. So I just don't think it's worth having 2 sort of 7 million price point defenders in the team. And I've had Cancelo since the start. I'm not gonna take him out now. Just keep him in there just because of ownership and points upside. So I probably won't be going for Liverpool. I think this is okay, but there's no one in there that's leaping out saying bye to me. I don't see Dalot in here.
I think he'd be the one for me. Shaw and Dalot, I think, are two. Yeah, if you're going to attack the first three,
exactly. Yeah. Dalot, I think there's maybe a rumor that he might have a bit of a hamstring, but he same price as Shaw, I think. So I think Dalot you'll see in a lot of initial squads. Possibly you could just rotate Dalot and White in that third spot alongside Cancelo and Trippier. That's quite nice. It gives you a bit of bench depth, a bit of a benching headache sometimes, but you could also go 4 at the back if there's any rotation anywhere else. So quite like that, and it's quite affordable.
Okay, let's have a quick look at midfielders, and far and away the highest is Kevin De Bruyne. Obviously they have the double, but 42 points. I think he's in my team ahead of Salah at the moment, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a sec. Son is still quite high up, 37. Salah 31. Sterling. I looked at Sterling. I had to have a bit of a double take, but they do have the double, obviously. And their fixtures, they're their fixtures before the double are really good as well for, attacking potential. So he could be one. I would be going for him, but I'm more interested in the one in sixth, who's in my draft at the moment, in Mason Mount at 7.5 million. I really, really fancy Mason Mount. Bernardo Silva, who we keep overlooking every week and does something most weeks, is still up there, 6.9 million at 28 points. Gundogan 26, and then we have Rashford and Bruno, who are on 24 points and 23. Ben Rama, who has quietly been having a pretty decent season for West Ham so far, and then the inevitable Almiron, 23 points. He just keeps on going, and then we go down to the rest. But yeah, Mason Mount, and the only reason I looked at him is because again, I went on the My Team feature on Fantasy Football Hub and just tipped our new recommended transfers feature, and it spits out a team for you based on your team value. And you can look at it and think, oh well, I won't go for him. What it does do, it does chuck in a couple of players who you may not have thought of, and it made me look at Chelsea a little bit more, just the fact that it picked Mount out, and I didn't realise how good their fixtures are actually. So Mount's in my draft. But Rich, thoughts on midfielders? Are you KDB or Salah, or neither?
Well, there's lots to talk about here. This is really interesting set of names, because it's not. There's loads on here that aren't in the template, isn't there? There's loads. So so Kevin De Bruyne, right? So let me give you my basic thoughts. He's not in my draft. I don't favour him over Salah, just because Salah's track record, penalties, more likely to score goals, etc. I know De Bruyne's more likely to get assists, but I'd rather have goals than assists. Virtually the same price. Kev sulked his way through the World Cup, didn't he? He sulked his way through. Now, whether that means he wants to get back to Manchester City, where and perform, and will perform, at the optimum level, but he didn't look happy, did he? He didn't look happy during World Cup. He didn't look happy with the Belgians set up and that sort of thing. So I'm definitely on the, if you're going to go to Foden or De Bruyne as your third City asset, then I'm on the Foden bus, personally. But the expected points say he's way out in front, isn't he? I mean, he's way out in front. There's often very fine lines between these graphs.
You're right, yeah.
He's, to have a sort of 6-point lead there is a big lead. So he's obviously predicted to do very well. It's very nailed. And if you don't fancy Liverpool, I personally think Liverpool will improve. They will yo-yo, and they will start to improve. So I'm going to go keep Salah over De Bruyne. But I can understand why people will go De Bruyne, and he'll be the one I'm sitting there hoping doesn't do too well through most of these games. I mean, moving down, Mount is another really interesting option. Obviously, came on and eventually won the penalty at the weekend, which was nice to see. But I'm still not convinced. He does seem to play most minutes under Potter, so I think he's pretty nailed. However, I quite like the option of dropping down to Mount, having seen Chelsea play a couple of games, and maybe getting him in for the double off the 8 million mid. So I think it's really important to have an 8 million mid in your draft, because there's several candidates: Foden, Saka, Kulusevski, Mount, etc., all around that price point. But you want to be able to move to Mount maybe for the double if Chelsea is showing some form, and you can bring him in then. Whether you could say, save a transfer, get him now. I think I'd probably rather have Foden for a couple of games and then switch to him.
Okay.
How does that sound?
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, but I do think he's a good option, and probably the safest Chelsea attacking option to have. What else do you see on there, Jian?
I'm pretty much in agreement with you on most things. I think De Bruyne in isolation is such a good pick, but I think when you have the option of Foden at 8.3, I believe it is, I think it's so difficult to justify him when you can therefore get Salah alongside him. I think Salah's got good fixtures for him, and I just think he's gonna do really well. So I think it's difficult for me not to go with Salah when you can also have Foden as well. Now, will De Bruyne outscore Foden? Probably, but I don't think it'll be by too much. Whereas I think if you're missing out on Salah, I don't imagine anyone getting too close, maybe apart from Bruno or someone here or there. With Mason Mount, I've never been his biggest fan, and I'd be a little bit careful. I'd rather pay the extra bit of money and go Sterling. And also, given how good a World Cup Pulisic had, I wonder if he could force his way into the side. And if so, that'd be a really, really interesting little differential, because when he was in his purple patch, he looked amazing a couple seasons ago. So, and he's got the goals in him. So I think maybe he could be the one that's probably flying under the radar.
Yeah, that's what I mean by that. I think we need to watch Chelsea for a couple of games to see what the team looks like, how well it plays, and if they do settle into a rhythm that Potter likes, and therefore isn't going to chop and change so much. So I just don't know. I couldn't tell you what the team will be right now, for next Saturday. So also for next Monday. So that's what puts me off. Sterling's an interesting thought though. It's a bit punty, isn't it? Because again, you don't know whether he'll start the game. But
that's my problem with Chelsea. Like, I really don't know what we're going to get, and it's probably why I've avoided any of the assets apart from Kepa from now.
That's fair.
But yeah, I don't think Mount's a bad pick.
Why isn't Foden on this graph? Is he just completely minuted out then, Fergie, because of his substitute appearances?
I think his expected minutes at the moment are around 71 minutes, because he's subbed off all the time. So he's probably there or thereabouts, but just under that line of 20 points. Again, it's like expected minutes is so important. It's such an important part of this game now. If you got on Foden at the right time this season for his hat trick and whatever else, and then you managed to jump off him, which you probably wouldn't have, but if you did jump off him at that point, you're laughing. And I think Luke on Twitter is a big thing of, like, if you can reasonably predict expected minutes, that is where the edge and the skill to FPL is going, isn't it? It's not everyone knows who the best players are now. It's more how you can. It's kind of managing the jigsaw of when to get players in rather than who to have, almost, if that makes sense. And just the last name for me to call out on here, obviously Almiron. Rich, I don't think you scoffed at me in game week 1. Adam definitely scoffed at me, but what an absolute revelation this guy has been. He's
scored another couple. He scored another couple in a friendly this week, hasn't he, or something? He's got another brace.
Andrew Savage just put in the chat. He said he's just scored 2 and hit the bar in the friendlies. I don't know if that's the same game or another one, but he's just on fire. I mean, absolutely on fire. He scored 6 goals in pre-season, which obviously put him on our radars a little bit, but it was just seen as a bit of it's only a friendly. But he has kicked on, and he is flying at 5.8 million still. He started the season at 5 million, 5.8. He's got to be in your team, right?
I think the danger here is, someone look up his ownership? But his ownership's got to be heading towards 50% right now. It will be by the time people have finished drafting. It's
because of his price as well.
That means that if you haven't got him and you think, he's going to regress to the mean, he's not. He's stats, he's overperforming by miles, and he just won't keep it up. It could kill your rank if you don't own him. That's the thing. You've got to almost have a spot for Almiron, even if you don't fancy him. Not owning him and then getting him later will hurt you more than owning him and then moving him on if he does regress a bit. So I think I've got to have him. He's not in my draft, but I think I've got to get him, really. Feel sort of just from a sort of almost like
feel naked without him.
A rank maintenance perspective, I've got to have him.
Naked.
I think one person who went under the radar is Kulusevski as well. Given they've got a double eventually, and he's looked so good. He looked so good when he came back from injury, and even prior to that. And with Kane and Son not being 100% there, he could end up stepping up.
Brain Clough in the chat just put an interesting one in as well. He says, I'm punting Mahrez. He's been home with Haaland, right? So, all the other forwards haven't been. So, again, it would be an absolute shot in the dark, but it could be one of those, we all know what Mahrez can do, right? When he gets a good run.
Game week 1. Yeah, game week 1, I like that a lot.
Good shout.
More game week 17.
Yep. And let's just finally have a look at the forwards. Unsurprisingly, Haaland absolutely flying at the top with 48 points. Didn't play in the World Cup. It's been a holiday. He's been resting. I think he trained with 6 other Man City players yesterday or something. So he's absolutely nailed the start. He's going to be everyone's captain, which kind of ruins the captaincy a little bit. But he's just immense to watch, and it's just so pleased to have him in the Premier League. Kane is really high still. I've never seen 2 players so clear of the rest when it comes to predictions, in all honesty. But Kane is up there, 41.7. We'll see a massive dive down in the forwards. Massive dive down to Wilson on 26 points, Mitrovic 26, Darwin 25, Tony 24, Martial, who we touched on, 23, Ings and Watkins and Ketia. So it's very much there's not a lot between all those players. The one which maybe surprised me a little bit there is Firmino at 8.1. It's just 17 points. It's probably to his expected minutes. It's probably around between 65 and 70. But if you think he's going to get more minutes, I do think Firmino could actually be a pretty good shout. But early thoughts on front lines. I mean, that to me sticks out as Haaland and Kane should probably be in our teams, right? But obviously, what we touched on with earlier about Kane. So, Jian, is Kane in your draft at the moment?
He's not. He's the one player that I really wanted, but I just couldn't stretch to, just because of money problems. I think it's difficult to have him, Haaland, and Salah. I guess we had this debate about Threemium a lot in the first part of the season, and with having Cancelo as well, it makes it quite difficult. So I'll try and find a way, but I just don't know how feasible it is because of how much you have to sacrifice in the rest of the squad.
Cancelo to Walker, would kind of enable an 8 to 9 million player up. That these are things, the compromises we may have to make. Rich, thoughts on forwards there?
Yeah, at the moment I'm Haaland, Mitrovic, Darwin, Kane. Just for the price, I just and the slight risks over the yellow, because I mean he gets a booking in those Christmas fixtures, that's going to significantly affect those expected points, isn't it? So just a yellow card will drop him back into the 25, 26 bracket. So I think I'm going to go without Kane to begin with. Although I've owned him for most of the early part of the season. He was in my team and did well. Certainly ticked along, just scored, I think, pretty much every week for something like 11 to 12 consecutive weeks returned. Yeah. So he's really, really steady and will continue to be so. But he's so much money if you're keeping a premium midfielder. I've seen a lot of Threemium drafts. I've seen a lot of Threemium teams. Some of those Threemium teams have done really well, but they've had a little bit of luck with the fringe players, in order to do well. So I think you do have to compromise quite a bit to have a good Threemium.
I think it's the bench as well, right? So normally the kind of advice around the Christmas period is make sure you've got a pretty strong bench, because there's so many fixtures in a short period of time. But there are quite a lot of cheaper options who've been starting. Obviously, players like Almiron, Andreas Pereira, they could be your third and fourth midfielders, right, rather than your fourth and fifth now. So there are ways of getting to Threemium if you really, really want to. Yeah. Okay, let's have a look at our.
You're gonna have it. You haven't said whether you're having him yet.
At the moment, he's not in my draft at the moment, but I'm not sure. Like I say, I've thrown a draft together for 2 or 3 minutes. I haven't put a lot of thought into it. Jian, we've got your current draft now on screen. Do you want to talk us through it?
Yeah, so obviously we spoke about Ward and Kepa, pretty cheap. Ward, and they don't rotate brilliantly, but it does the job. And Chelsea have great fixtures to start with a double, so we attack that. The triple United, I just really like those first 3 fixtures, and I think they're going to do really well. I think something's brewing under Ten Hag. That kind of hasn't happened with any of the managers since Fergie, the worst Fergie compared to you. And then I think you got Dalla at the back. It could either be Shaw, but I think it'll be one of them, just given their upside in the fixtures. So that's that. The City 3 we've talked about quite a bit. Foden is essentially the placeholder for De Bruyne, but I can't stretch to him. Cancelo, I think it's just so difficult to miss out on with his ceiling. In fact, he's probably the only nailed one in that back line apart from Edison, and Haaland is Haaland. Then the reason I've gone Trippier, Shaw, and Castagna at the back, and this team will play as a 4-4-2, is for the exact reason you just mentioned, that you need some strength and depth in your squads in that Christmas break. They rotate pretty well because I can play Trippier basically every week because of his upside, and then Shaw can have the first few, and Castagna can play after that. So that works quite nicely. And then the Fulham boys, Mitrovic and Pereira. Pereira just a great price and a great enabler to have whenever you need him. And Mitrovic has obviously got a double, good fixtures, good price. So I think it's a fairly well-balanced squad.
Yeah, no, it looks really good. And I think
it's aggressive. It's aggressive. I like it.
I do.
Because it will give you, if United do well and they hand out a couple of thrashings in those first 3 games, your rank's gonna go up massively, isn't it? And it's because you're going to be different to the template.
I wonder how many people will go United. Do you think it will? Do you think it won't be 10 play at all with those first three? Do you think people will still revert to the Martinellis, the Gabriels at the back?
It's funny because historically in fantasy, and I'm not just talking about FPL, I'm talking about other games, but historically, because there were so many Man United fans around the world, their players have probably always had high ownership, but purely based on that fact rather than they're kind of actually worth it. But I'm tripled up on United as well. I think I just look at the fixtures. I kind of agree with what you say about what they're building at the moment under Ten Hag, this spirit and mentality. I look how Rashford performed in the World Cup, and there's a few stars aligning. I think for me, Ronaldo leaving probably. I think that's a weight off the whole team's and managers' shoulders. I think it makes the team easier to predict as well now, which probably wasn't that easy before. So I think with all those things lined up, I do and their fixtures are banging, right? Who have they got? I can't remember now.
Forest, Wolves, Bournemouth, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, flipping out home to Forest, away to Wolves, home to Bournemouth. I mean, you can't get better than that.
I think the point about Ronaldo's really good. I think it would just allow the squad to play in a slightly more expressive manner.
Exactly.
And even off the pitch, I feel like they won't be treading on eggshells as much. There won't be that tension. So I think that'll probably be pretty good for the whole dressing room.
Agree. Rich, let's have a look at your draft so far. Obviously, it's keen to stress this is so far, obviously.
Yeah, I probably don't. There's several things I don't like about it already. I only did it yesterday. So. I think I've gone with Kepa and Ward, like most people at the moment. I think I have Dallo in there. It's not quite on the screen yet. There's a little bit of a lag on my YouTube, but I think I've got Dallo and I've got Gabriel in this draft, right?
That's right.
At the moment, so I've sort of spent a little bit of extra cash on Gabriel as the fourth defender. Then I brought Rashford in to the midfield. I did have Saka in that position before, but I think given Arsenal's fixtures, it's one attacker feels enough given their fixtures. They're playing Newcastle early doors. We don't know whether Nketiah will definitely start all games. They might try Martinelli up front, in which case definitely keeping Martinelli.
Good shout.
Foden is my preference over De Bruyne just because of his price. The 4.5 million difference almost. Kept Salah, Andreas and Mitrovic just stay because of the double. And I think Andreas at 4.5 is just such a great player. He spends most of the time in my bench one position. I've missed out on most of his hauls, but at least he's sometimes getting hauls. So why drop him? And then because of the Jota Diaz situation at Liverpool, I think Darwin is worth 9 million. But then if I do want to get to Kane, he is only a sort of 2-move transfer away from reorganizing to at that price point of 9. You can get to Kane at a push by selling a decent player elsewhere, coming down off an 8 or coming down off a Cancelo or something.
Foden to Almiron.
Generate the funds. Yeah. Well, the one that I'm in an R and over is that I might put Almiron on instead of Rashford, purely as a kind of ownership hedge, really.
His ownership, mind is thank you, Summers, put it in the chat, 35.6.
35.6. Okay. Yeah, it's still pretty high, and that will go up in the next week as people start drafting. So I might go. You could easily go start with Rashford, couldn't you? Give him those 3 games, and then move him down to Almiron to generate some cash. But this team's got only Trippier in it, so I'm sort of like saying I'm going Liverpool and United over Newcastle, which in normal years you'd say, well, there's no problem there. But Newcastle's form has been so good that it's light on Newcastle. So the other thing is that you see Bueno there as the 3.9 make weight. This team has again got 0.0 in the bank. Spent all the money, and that doesn't feel good. I made that mistake a couple of times this season already and had nothing in the bank, and I don't think that's a good way to start. You want to keep a little bit of money so that you can make a move if someone gets injured or someone will emerge as the must-have player for week 18 or 19. So it's very much a sort of thrown together. It's very template, and I'll probably change it 4 or 5 players in there before next weekend.
Yeah, we will be doing a pod next week with Adam, a kind of team reveal pod when we on next Thursday evening, which obviously a lot of this data and a lot of our ideas will have been a lot more refined. We'll have a lot more news about who's going to be fit, who's not going to be fit. So yeah, this is just a kind of at the moment sort of look, and just finally looking at the team I put together, which quite like the look of. I got to be honest. I've got Ward and Kepa, the same as everyone else. Cancelo, Dalot, Trippier. I put Reece James in there as a bit of it's kind of a bit of a placeholder really, just to know that I can afford him if I really want to. And then Bueno, then I think he started the last 6 games for Wolves. He's played 90 for Wolves the last 6 games, so he looks like he could get a game if we're short. But I like having James there just to know I can afford him if I want to. So then I don't, if we do get news, James is going to start. I don't have to try and scramble away towards him. Midfield, again, I really like this actually. Rashford, I've got Mountain at the moment. Almiron, got KDB. Obviously, he could be Salah, and I've got Andreas as the 5th. I think it's quite aggressive. I think it's attacking the fixtures. It's attacking the fixtures for the first 2 or 3 back there. And then up front, in this one, it does have Darwin, Hunt, and Haaland. But I think I can do Mitrovic. I think I'd rather start with Martial ahead of Mitrovic. Just really attack those first 2, and then potentially move on to Mitrovic there. So, yeah. I mean, this took me about 2 or 3 minutes to put together. But looking at that, I don't see an awful lot I'm missing. I do think Darwin, similarly to what you said earlier, Jian, around Foden covering De Bruyne with the prices in mind. I think Darwin and Salah are pretty similar there for me as well. I don't think I'm missing many players there.
You haven't got any Arsenal players in there.
I haven't got any Arsenal players. That is a good point. So I suppose Martinelli. I could go Martinelli ahead of Mount, or I could,
Have you still got the value in Martinelli? Or
yes, yeah. I've only been messing on my. I haven't made the changes on FPL. I've just done this on my team, but yeah, just
it's good. I like it. I mean, it's kind of never mind what's gone before. Let's just go for these fixtures.
Well, and that's the way I'm looking at it.
Chelsea's double. United are going to smash it, and you're absolutely convinced about that.
Well, I'm not convinced. It's just that. I think FPL is always about looking for opportunities, and if you're not looking for opportunities, then what are you? Sorry, I'm not aiming this at you, Rich. If we're not looking for opportunities, then what are we doing? That's the whole point, is to try and predict what's going to happen. But obviously,
I think that trio of De Bruyne, Mount, and Martial will kind of make or break your team. But if you get it right, it's massive. The only thing I'd consider with it is maybe the opportunity cost of it, of not having someone like Mitrovic and not having Salah, and kind of weighing that up rather than just looking at the upside of that.
I think
you don't want Salah.
I said right at the start of this season
that looks like a free hit team to me,
like a 2-week free hit team.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But I've got routes to everyone. I can go I've got Martial straight to Mitrovic. I can go from De Bruyne straight to Salah. I've got routes, and like I say, players like that are like James, De Bruyne, and Mitrovic are kind of placeholders there, because there are other players I can move to quite really easily, even on the day. Even if we get a thing back, I quite like.
I think those 3 drafts have really given me, the other 2 have really given me some food for thought. I really like it.
They're very different.
They are very different, but they're all very good. I looked at each of them and thought, wow, that's a good draft. But they all are. So interesting stuff, gents. Thanks for that. Like I say, keen to stress, it is very much early days here, right? We haven't got any information about any of the teams yet, and all the predictions are based on current expected minutes, which we will be working on every single day over the next week. Well, sorry, over the next week, up until Boxing Day and beyond, to make sure that all the predictions are the best they could possibly be based on expected minutes. So, but good stuff.
Excellent. Good to be back.
Good to be back. It is good to be back, Jian. Very, very well said. And that is it for us for this week. So thank you so much to everyone who joined in the chat. It's much, much appreciated. Those who are going to watch it back on YouTube, and for those listening on the podcast version, your support, as usual, is very, very much appreciated. Just a reminder, my team is now live for you to pick, plan, and optimize your FPL team. And we have just released our brand new feature, which is absolutely amazing. If you haven't seen it, it is called Recommended Transfers. So just go onto my team, go on to transfers or recommended transfers, and it will tell you your most optimal Gameweek 17 team based on your current team value. So you just import your team ID and it will tell you, it'll work out your team value and tell you the most optimal team back. Just bear in mind that obviously, like I say, it is based on the current expected minutes, which will refine. So what is brilliant about this feature is that it will always update. So it'll update every single day, and your team will change every day as we get more kind of intelligence via, who's been playing and who's not. So it's absolutely superb. Go and have a look if you haven't already. Fantasy Football Hub, my team, go on transfers. And what will happen once the Gameweek 17 deadline rolls around, it will then change back and you will have your recommended transfer straight away for Gameweek 18, your optimal transfer based on your team. So that is now live feature on the site. It is absolutely fantastic. It's a game changer. There is nothing like it. And like I say, I think it's really important to stress, right? You may look at it and think that's not for me. And that's fine, right? But it may also give you an idea which you may not have thought of otherwise that may help you think a different way. Because I do think that, we all consume a lot of content. We're all on social media and things are driven into your mind as this is the way it must be, right? There is no bias with an artificial intelligence-based algorithm. It just looks at things completely objectively based on data. So, but it's not saying you have to go with what they say, but it throws up ideas which you may go, exactly. Oh, I never would have thought of that.
You must buy Bobby Decordova-Reid.
Exactly. However, it may make you think, why is it showing him? And you may look at the fixture and go, do you know what? Actually, with this price, this allows me X, Y, and Z. So, there we go. Rich, thank you so much as usual for joining me. Where can people get hold of you?
At Rich Clarke FPL on Twitter.
Lovely stuff. Look forward to reading your early thoughts and your team reveal on the Hub next week as well. And Jian.
Yep, that'll be out Thursday.
Same on Twitter at FPL_Jian Batra.
Thank you so much, Jian. As usual, absolutely superb offer. I think you offer something a bit different from everyone else. A really good twist on everything, which really makes us all think. I really, really enjoy having you on, and we will hopefully have you on very soon again.
Yeah, definitely.
If you're looking
before we go,
yes, go
prediction
on.
For the World Cup final.
Oof, good shout, Rich. Give me time to think.
France by 1 goal.
Okay. I think I will go. I think it might go to extra time and penalties. Personally, I think it's going to be.
Would that be the first one?
A bit of a score draw. Didn't Germany won it with in extra time, didn't they? Gutser, I think. I might be completely making that
penalties. Up. I don't remember a World Cup final going to penalties.
I reckon it'll be really, really tight. I just think they've both got solid teams. They've both got superstars, so I think it'll be tight. So yeah,
I push you for a winner.
I'll have to go for Argentina on pens because I think they got Martinez, haven't they? He's a bit of a beast. So yeah, I reckon Martinez will save a couple of penalties and Argentina win on penalties. There we go. That's what I see. Which
do you think?
I think for Messi, I think would be the crowning glory. I'm very much Messi over Ronaldo, so I think I would love to see it for that as well. Anyway, yourself, Jian?
Which way are you going?
I'm going Argentina. I feel like everything's just aligning for Messi to win this. I don't know what's going to happen in the final, but I think regardless, Messi will somehow pull it out of the bag. So, yeah, I'm going to go with more of a destiny story, and I think Messi will win it. I shared a clip yesterday on Twitter. I retweeted it. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but if you haven't, and everyone listening, just go and have a look. I retweeted it yesterday at FFH_Fergi, and it was basically it was an Argentinian reporter talking to Messi about the impact that he's had on just the whole of Argentina, and it nearly brought me to tears. I was just like, oh my goodness. I mean, in terms of like life goals, it was she was just saying, forget the final, forget all this. It's not about that. You have touched every Argentinian's heart, and you have made the world a better place. And I was just like, oh my goodness. It was really good. But
So this
Enjoy the
podcast
game.
and video will be on the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel, with the podcast versions available on all major podcast platforms. If you liked what you watched, please press the like button. It would be much, much appreciated. Oh, just quick. Paul Fletcher says USA 94 was pens. Yeah, I remember Roberto Baggio missed the penalty. Didn't hit it over, didn't he? He did, yeah. As did Janet Jackson in the USA 94 opening ceremony. She did.
The goal split in two.
That's it. And she hit it wide. Was it Janet Jackson? I think it was Janet Jackson, wasn't it? I can't remember.
Somebody, yeah, Diana Ross, maybe.
Oh, it might have been Diana. I can't remember. Yeah, it was. It was a singer. Please press the like button if you enjoyed, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be back at the usual time of 5:30 p.m. GMT next Thursday. Adam should be back with our near finalised Gameweek 17 teams. In the meantime, enjoy the World Cup final and the final few days before the FPL chaos begins again. Goodbye for now.